At 10 years old, my family immigrated to a small suburban town in the Bay Area in California. The town was probably 85% white, and I was surrounded by classmates with immense wealth and privilege. My classmates, while nice on the whole, knew very little outside of their bubbles. They confused Taiwan with Thailand and would complain that the delicious pot stickers that my mom packed for lunch smelled weird. The town where I lived was extremely homogeneous, thus limiting my understanding of what America was. I thought that it was better for me to assimilate. I tried hard to be fluent in English, learned all the lyrics to popular songs, and dressed like everyone else. Throughout middle school, I was even obsessed with becoming one of the popular kids, which to me meant wearing as much Abercrombie or Hollister, wearing makeup, and hanging by the school bleachers where the cool kids hung out during lunchtime. I couldn't accept myself for who I was, and ignorance of my Taiwanese culture made me want to hide it sometimes. Even though my teachers helped me grow accustomed to American education and culture, I didn't understand that differences can coexist and had never heard of interculturalism. To me, there was only one way towards acceptance, and that meant adopting the dominant, often white way of living. I also faced some conflicts among friends of the same race. I think our common minority identity in a predominantly white space led to some internalized racism, which caused misunderstandings towards each other. Judgments were made about who was too Asian, who was not Asian enough, who was too white, etc. Sometimes being able to speak Chinese was seen as an admirable thing, but oftentimes it casted oneself as the foreign other. There were countless fine lines we all had to straddle. Perhaps what hurt the most was that some Chinese Americans would outright deny the legitimacy of my Taiwanese identity, insisting that I was Chinese, not Taiwanese. But I was still very proud of my Taiwanese heritage. In the summers of my teenage years, I would go back to Taiwan. On top of eating all the delicious food I couldn't get in the States, I would buy clothes and shoes which are considered trendy in Taiwan and get a trendy Taiwanese haircut. I would be excited about my makeover when returning to America, but instead of receiving compliments, I would be ridiculed by my Asian American peers. They called me a fob, a term that stands for fresh off the boat and describes first-generation Asian immigrants, but is often used in a sort of derogatory way among Asians in America. On the other hand, when I would visit Taiwan, my Taiwanese friends and relatives would stare at my long, untrimmed hair and American-style clothing and comment at how Americanized or whitewashed I had become. To this day, they are still sometimes surprised that I can still speak Chinese, as if English is the only language one can speak in America. This seesawing between the two cultures led to some confusion, and I couldn't find a place anywhere. I seemed too Asian in America, but too American in Taiwan. At the same time, having the linguistic and cultural knowledge of both cultures, I delighted in moments in which I could serve as a liaison between Taiwanese and American people, and enjoy being able to freely mold myself to whatever identity I felt suited me best, depending on the situation. After high school, I moved to LA to attend a small private liberal arts college called Occidental College. Oxy was much more diverse than my small Bay Area town, and diversity was also welcomed and celebrated. Oxy, which included my professors, mentors, and peers, gave me the academic knowledge and language to understand many struggles I had experienced, and I started to understand these things as a part of greater systemic forces that existed outside of individual experiences. I grew critical of hegemony as it oppresses those who do not fit the dominant mold or narrative, and learned to view my opinions in a more critical, informed perspective. This helped me to be open to diversity and difference on various levels, including on the cultural level. Gradually, I grew more comfortable in my cultural identity and came to adopt the 1.5 generation Asian American identity. My various leadership roles also gifted me the skill of active listening. I learned to listen while suspending judgment in my own interpretations and learned to respect other people's opinions and not impose my own. I also learned to disagree with others while maintaining respect and openness. Before I knew it, I came to value empathy as of personal value. Even if I can't feel what they're feeling, I could understand where they're coming from and open myself to their perspectives. While none of these skills were explicitly linked to intercultural practices at the time, I believe these skills helped me to be more open to diverse experiences, which were crucial in laying the foundation towards learning about other cultures. I was also fortunate enough to study abroad in Rome for a semester. Besides visiting museums and eating all the good Italian food, I taught English and sociology at Italian high schools and witnessed lots of students holding strikes at school, something that was apparently common at Italy at the time. I traversed lesser-known neighborhoods where immigrant communities lived and visited multicultural schools filled with new immigrants and refugees. I made friends with Italians, Parisians, expats living in Europe, and Chinese Italians. It was the first time in which I felt like I was forming connections with people who are not American or Taiwanese. Through interacting with them, I came to appreciate learning about other societies and ways of thinking. My understanding of the world expanded, and I saw that everyone, regardless of their cultural identity, had their own set of personal, political, and social struggles. My passion for intercultural communication grew, and I wanted others to also experience the same things as I did. After graduating from college, I took on a Fulbright grant to teach English in South Korea for 2 years. Unlike the more casual culture in America and Italy, there were a lot more norms and rules that I had to follow, especially working in a Korean school. Korea highly valued one's social standing, and one's social standing usually grew with age. As the newest and youngest teacher in a Korean high school, that meant I was dead bottom at the hierarchy, which meant I had to be extra vigilant of my behavior. I learned what felt like hundreds of table manners, adopted the habit of bowing to my superiors all the time, and learned to speak in the right formalities. All of this was a response to the face-saving and elder-respecting values that Korea prizes. Trust me, I made many mistakes throughout my time. More than anything, however, I wanted to be a good teacher to my students. As cheesy as this may sound, my students captured my heart with their smiles and curiosity towards me as a multinational foreigner. My drive to learn more about Korean culture largely stemmed from me wanting to grow closer to all 400-some high school kids. Thus, I started taking private Korean lessons, sprinkled in Korean words and phrases in my teaching and conversations, and educated myself about Korean history, current issues, and of course, K-pop. I even learned how to rap in Korean and performed in front of the whole school. Students noticed my eagerness to understand them and their culture and responded reciprocally. They grew more eager to learn about the diversity of America and the history and culture of Taiwan. Teaching in South Korea reveals that cross-cultural communication must begin with a genuine interest in others different from oneself. Furthermore, the more Korean I learned, the more I enjoyed it, and the more I was able to use it in my classroom and captivate my students' attention. I truly believe that learning a language is not only important in improving direct communication, but also in acquiring a new system of thought and cultural values that are often embedded in a language. While I still had much to learn, Korea no longer seemed as big of an enigma as I had first experienced it. Instead of regarding Korean ways of thinking as overly hierarchical or undemocratic, I grew to see that indirectness and humility reveals reverence for those older and wiser than oneself. I also learned words and emotions that can't be succinctly expressed in English, and I started recognizing those new emotions in me, or I was able to verbalize some feelings that I couldn't completely grasp before. Learning Korean started from a desire to form interpersonal connections, but later turned into a passion and hobby. It even helped me appreciate the linguistic diversity in English and Chinese. As I showed and taught about America's diversity to students, I myself came to appreciate the diversity that exists in America and the English language. By the time that I left Korea, I knew I wanted to encourage more intercultural awareness and genuine interactions. After 2 years in Korea, it was time to return to the States. I started school at UPenn Grad School of Education, and funnily enough, I experienced more culture shock moving from the West Coast to the East Coast than moving from Korea to the West Coast. Unlike the laid-back environment in sunny Southern California, I was overwhelmed by people who seemed to be more focused on the doing activity orientation. People often rush from place to place and try to accomplish so many things than simply being and enjoying the moment. Also, having just returned from Korea, where humility is prized and standing out is frowned upon, I sometimes feel uncomfortable with having to network and market myself to not just survive, but thrive. Thankfully, I have mentors and peers who encourage me along the way. For example, in the first semester, I participated in a 3-day retreat called Intercultural Leadership Program, where new Penn students from diverse international backgrounds gather to learn about intercultural awareness so that we can use our unique cultural identities to improve the campus. I learned about various communication styles and was able to articulate a lot of the cultural uncertainties that I was feeling. Funnily enough, since I taught everyone how to make the finger heart sign, which originated in Korea, everyone started to mistake me for being Korean. The retreat helped me to adjust to the fast-paced culture at Penn, and we were still able to find belonging in this eclectic space. Right now, I'm still the same hard-working girl from Taiwan who juggles too many roles and duties, yet my intercultural experiences abroad and in the US have made me slow down to reflect deeper on myself. I straddle between my Taiwanese and American identity and find ease in the humble and communalistic values in Asian cultures, while also harnessing confidence from America's individualistic and self-deterministic values. As I code switch between languages, I am able to express myself more fully and authentically as ever before, yet I am still uncovering more ways to express myself while learning about others and this world. This has been my intercultural journey so far, and while it's not finished yet, I am excited to see how it develops.